Tonight, we're learning a legal back and forth over the death investigation of Ellen Greenberg will now go to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The 28-year-old teacher was found dead inside her Manayunk apartment with 20 stab wounds in 2011.
More than a decade after Ellen Greenberg was found dead in her apartment, her family says the justice system has finally made a step in the right direction.
There's always an explanation science has to offer for any phenomenon. And then there's technology. Its advancements have made science sharper, clearer, and more precise. But what happens when science and logic seem to clash? When the explanations provided don't quite add up? When the facts scream one thing, but the conclusions whisper another? This is the chilling enigma surrounding the death of Ellen Greenberg, a case that defies logic, challenges science, and leaves us questioning everything we think we know about justice. If you've never heard of Ellen Greenberg, now is the time to listen closely. If you have heard her name before, you've probably wondered, damn, this is strange. And you're not wrong. Ellen's story is one that lingers in the shadows of doubt, a tale that refuses to be neatly tucked away. It's a case that demands attention, scrutiny, and above all, answers. But be warned, once you step into this labyrinth, there's no turning back. On a cold January day in 2011, Ellen Greenberg, a 27-year-old teacher, was found dead in her Philadelphia apartment. The scene was nothing short of horrifying: 20 stab wounds, 11 bruises, and a knife lodged in her chest. But here's where the story takes a sharp, unsettling turn. The official ruling? Suicide. Yes, suicide. Let that sink in for a moment. How does someone stab themselves 20 times? How do 11 bruises appear on their own body? And how does a knife end up embedded so deeply in their chest that it defies basic physics? The questions pile up, each one more baffling than the last. Detectives and investigators are human, and humans are prone to errors. But could this be more than just a mistake? Could it be tunnel vision, a refusal to see beyond the easiest explanation? Or is there something darker at play? Ellen's case is riddled with discrepancies, inconsistencies, and unanswered questions. Why was the crime scene cleaned up before a thorough investigation? Why were key pieces of evidence overlooked? And why was the suicide ruling so hastily accepted? As we peel back the layers of this case, one thing becomes clear. The official story doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The science doesn't align with the logic, and the logic doesn't align with the facts. Ellen's death is a puzzle with missing pieces, and those pieces point to a truth that has yet to be uncovered. Whether you believe the detectives were right or wrong, one thing is certain. By the end of this story, your perspective will shift. The questions will linger, the doubts will grow, and the need for answers will become undeniable. So, buckle up. This isn't just a story about a tragic death. It's a story about justice, truth, and the lengths we must go to uncover them. Ellen Greenberg's case is a stark reminder that sometimes the truth isn't just buried, it's hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. And trust me, by the time we're done, you'll be asking plenty. A warm welcome to True Crime Family Stories. We're excited to have you join us as we delve into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the most shocking true crime stories from around the world. To stay up to date on our latest episodes, please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. We'd also love to hear from you. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from, as we might just be covering a crime from your city or neighborhood next. Your support means a lot to us, and we appreciate your feedback in helping us create more content that resonates with our audience. Ellen Ray Greenberg was born on June 23, 1983, to Josh and Sandy Greenberg. She was a bright, ambitious young woman with a passion for education and a heart full of dreams. Ellen earned her degree in communications from Penn State University, where she honed her ability to connect with others, a skill that would later define her career. She went on to earn her teaching credentials from Temple University, driven by a desire to make a difference in the lives of children. By 2011, Ellen was living her dream as a first-grade teacher at Juniata Park Academy in the Juniata neighborhood of Philadelphia. Her students adored her, and her colleagues admired her dedication. She was the kind of teacher who made learning an adventure, the kind of person who lit up a room just by walking into it. Ellen's life seemed to be on a steady, upward trajectory. She lived in the Manayunk neighborhood of Philadelphia, a vibrant area known for its charm and community spirit. There, she shared an apartment with her fiancé, Samuel Goldberg. Ellen Ray Greenberg radiated warmth in every classroom she entered. At just 27, this vibrant first-grade teacher at Juniata Park Academy had already established herself as someone special, one of the founding teachers at the school, sitting on hiring panels, making real impact. The children adored her. As guidance counselor Michelle Stallone Coelho remembered, those little guys loved her. The day started with hugs in the morning and ended with hugs when they left. If she was absent, they didn't perform well. They just weren't happy without her. Her passion for teaching went beyond traditional methods. Ellen incorporated Pilates into her lessons to get her young students moving and energized. This was Ellen, innovative, caring, full of life. A natural educator who seemed destined for a remarkable career. Even as a high school student, Ellen had shown that special spark, that rare combination of responsibility and genuine care for others. In a video for the Hannah Education Foundation, where she served as a board member, the young Ellen had confidently asked, "How do you build a dream? What foundations do you build it on?" Questions that now hang hauntingly in the air. Ellen's life had appeared to be moving in all the right directions. She had recently sent out save the dates for her August wedding to Sam Goldberg, her boyfriend of 3 years. According to her friend Erica Hamilton, Ellen was over the moon about her engagement. The couple shared an apartment at the Venice Lofts on Flat Rock Road in Philadelphia. But beneath this veneer of happiness, subtle changes had begun to worry her parents, Joshua and Sandra Greenberg. Ellen had started experiencing anxiety, something she'd been open about and was addressing through therapy and medication. More concerning to her father was a shift in her once independent personality. Everything was, "I'll have to check with Sam. I'll have to see what Sam says," Joshua Greenberg recalled, troubled by his daughter's newfound deference to her fiancé. She wasn't the same Ellen. She seemed nervous and anxious. Ellen had mentioned to her parents that she might quit her job and return to New York City, citing stress from wedding planning combined with work responsibilities. But when the teacher who later took over Ellen's classroom examined her materials, everything was immaculately organized, perfect lesson plans, perfectly marked assignments. This contradiction, Ellen claiming work stress while maintaining perfect professional standards, was the first of many puzzling inconsistencies. Which is why what happened on January 26, 2011, seemed so utterly incomprehensible. To the outside world, Ellen had it all: a fulfilling career, a loving partner, and a future brimming with promise. So why commit suicide? On January 26, 2011, that future was brutally cut short. On that fateful January day, a massive winter storm had blanketed the Northeast. Schools closed early, including Juniata Park Academy. Ellen left work, stopped to fill her gas tank, and arrived home around 1 p.m. Her fiancé, Sam, joined her later that afternoon. According to Sam's account, which would soon raise troubling questions, around 4:45 p.m., he decided to work out at the gym inside their apartment complex. When he returned less than an hour later, he found the apartment door not just locked but secured with the swing lock from inside. He couldn't enter. Sam began knocking, then yelling Ellen's name through the door. When this failed to elicit a response, he started sending text messages. These messages evolved from casual inquiries, "Hello," and "What are you doing?" to increasingly agitated demands, "I'm getting pissed. You'd better have an excuse. What the fuck? And you have no idea." He even sent her an email. Neighbors would later confirm hearing this commotion, though none witnessed what happened next. Unable to get inside, Sam went to the lobby to speak with Philip Hanton, the concierge on duty. Sam explained his situation and asked for help opening the swing lock. Hanton declined, citing company policy. When Sam asked if he could break down the door, Hanton allegedly told him he could do whatever he wanted, but would be responsible for repairing any damage. Notably, Hanton observed that Sam was wearing Timberland-type boots. Curious footwear for someone who claimed to have been at the gym. A small detail, perhaps, but one that adds to the mosaic of inconsistencies surrounding that evening. Sam returned to their 6th-floor apartment and broke down the door. There, he discovered Ellen lying on the kitchen floor in a pool of blood, motionless. At approximately 6:30 p.m., he called 911.
Help! I need a everything now. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come help now.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no! Oh no! It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
No. So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't see where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
I shouldn't be allowed to listen to bad acting in 911 calls when I'm sick because I feel super petty. And I don't want to be petty, but here we go. Okay, so Sam initially tells the 911 operator that there's blood everywhere, right? And he thought that Ellen might have hit her head. Remember that.
Everywhere.
She might have fallen. Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Okay, so Sam says there's blood on the table and Ellen's face is a little purple, which I'm going to assume means he was close enough to Ellen to be able to distinguish or see some discoloration on her face.
Fire Department 842. What's the address? No.
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay. Is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and.
The 911 call itself is perhaps one of the most disturbing elements of this case. Sam's tone and statements simply don't align with what you'd expect from someone who has just found their fiancé in such horrific circumstances. "There's blood everywhere," he initially told the operator, suggesting Ellen might have hit her head. "Her face is a little purple," he added, indicating he was close enough to observe details of her appearance. Yet, remarkably, he claimed not to have noticed a large kitchen knife protruding from her chest until over 2 minutes into the call, after being instructed to check if she was breathing. "Her sweatshirt won't come off. It's the zipper on it," Sam said, before suddenly exclaiming, "Oh my God, a knife! A knife!" His tone, more surprised than horrified, jars against the gravity of the situation. And his immediate conclusion? She stabbed herself. Not that she'd been attacked, that she had stabbed herself. When asked by the operator if the knife was still in her chest, Sam's reply, "Yes, I didn't take it out," was delivered with such casual detachment that it's difficult to reconcile with the traumatic scene he was supposedly witnessing. At one point, what sounds like a laugh or a sigh breaks through his narrative. For someone who had just discovered his fiancée's body, his demeanor seemed bizarrely composed. The first responders to arrive were two members of the fire department. According to Tom Brennan, a former Pennsylvania state police officer with 25 years of experience who later investigated the case pro bono for the Greenberg family, the firefighters found Sam sitting in the hallway. The EMS officer pronounced Ellen dead at 6:40 p.m. As they were leaving, one lieutenant made a revealing comment to the concierge. "You got a murder upstairs." Yet, astonishingly, these first responders, the first people to see the scene besides Sam, were never interviewed by detectives. "These are the guys first one through the door, and they do the pronouncing, and they're never interviewed," Brennan would later marvel at this investigative lapse. One of the responding police officers, Detective Sierra, reported that Ellen was found sitting on the kitchen floor, with her head and upper body resting against the lower half of the kitchen cabinets. The knife was embedded in her left chest through her clothing, not under her zipped sweatshirt as Sam's 911 call suggested, but through it. Several kitchen knives were found in the sink beside an overturned knife block. Sierra noted no evidence of a struggle. Stephen Olszewski, an investigator for the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, arrived to find Sam present with family and friends. Near Ellen's body was a pair of eyeglasses, a hair scrunchie around her wrist, and most peculiarly a pristine white bathroom towel in her left hand, completely free of blood despite the massive amount of blood surrounding her. Olszewski observed 3 laptops in the apartment, one on the kitchen island, apparently Sam's, one in the master bedroom showing wedding planning materials, Ellen's personal computer, and one on the bedroom desk containing teaching materials, Ellen's work computer. His report explicitly stated, "There is no note found or anything indicative of a suicide on the computers or in the rest of the apartment." The only other exit from the apartment was a sliding patio door leading to a small 6th-floor balcony. There were no footprints in the fresh snow outside. The true horror of Ellen's injuries wasn't immediately apparent. She hadn't simply been stabbed once in the chest. She had been stabbed 20 times, 8 times in the chest, once in her stomach, once in the top of her head, penetrating her scalp, and 10 times in the back of her neck. On the kitchen counter sat a strainer of fresh blueberries and a peeled orange, as if Ellen had been preparing a healthy snack before the attack. Several concerning discrepancies began to emerge. Both Detective Sierra and Stephen Olszewski's reports indicated that Sam told police the doorman, Phil Hanton, was present when he broke down the door. But Hanton disputed this claim, stating he was the only person on duty that night and never left his desk. Even more troubling were reports that someone had arrived at the scene before EMS, specifically James Schwartzman, Sam's uncle by marriage. Schwartzman was no ordinary relative, but a well-connected attorney who had served as chairman of the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's Disciplinary Board and the Judicial Conduct Board of Pennsylvania. By 2018, he would be appointed to the Pennsylvania Court of Judicial Discipline. The property manager would later tell investigators that Schwartzman had made several attempts to go upstairs to speak with Sam, only to be told by police that he doesn't need an attorney yet. This suggests that police initially viewed Sam as a potential suspect. Indeed, Sam was led out of the building in handcuffs, presumably to be questioned. Yet this interrogation was strangely brief. According to witnesses, as Sam passed the concierge in handcuffs, he said, "Tell them I didn't do this." He was transported to district headquarters, but what happened next remains largely unknown. The Greenberg family has never been given access to these police reports or Sam's interview transcript. What is known is that Sam wasn't drug tested or asked for a DNA sample, basic procedures in a potential homicide investigation. Reports suggest that before calling 911, Sam made 2 other calls, one to his father and one to his uncle, James Schwartzman. While phone records haven't been made public to confirm this, if Uncle James was already present when EMS arrived, it logically follows that he was called before emergency services. Ellen's body was transferred to the morgue in the early morning hours of January 27th for autopsy. But by this point, a critical decision had already been made. From the moment police entered the apartment, they appeared to have concluded Ellen's death was a suicide, despite the baffling violence of the scene. This premature conclusion meant the apartment was never treated with the forensic care warranted by a potential homicide. Guy Andrea, a former homicide prosecutor for the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office who later examined the case, would find this handling of the crime scene deeply troubling, one of many investigative failures that have left Ellen Greenberg's true cause of death shrouded in mystery. 20 stab wounds, a security lock engaged from the inside, a pristine towel amid pools of blood, no suicide note, a fiancé with a strange demeanor, politically connected relatives arriving quickly at the scene, first responders never interviewed, a crime scene treated as a suicide from the start. The case of Ellen Greenberg poses numerous questions that demand answers. How does someone stab themselves repeatedly in the back of the neck? How does a woman planning her wedding, beloved by her students, suddenly take her own life in such a violent manner? And perhaps most importantly, why was this death so quickly classified as a suicide when the physical evidence screams for a more thorough investigation? Let's revisit the medical examiner's office. The arrival of Ellen Greenberg's body should have triggered a meticulous, almost surgical approach. Instead, there's a sense of unsettling casualness. Photographs were taken, yes, but the intensity of the examination seems to have been disproportionately low for a case with such violent injuries. To put it bluntly, if a body arrives with 20-plus stab wounds, it shouldn't be treated like a routine traffic fatality. It should scream potential homicide, and every action should reflect that. The absence of that urgency is a critical red flag. The Philadelphia Inquirer's report, citing the police's initial classification of Greenberg's death as a suicide, hinges on 2 key points: the locked apartment door and the absence of defensive wounds or signs of forced entry. But these points, when examined critically, raise more questions than answers. The locked door. This seemingly simple detail became the cornerstone of the suicide theory. But let's break this down. A locked door doesn't automatically equate to suicide. It signifies a door locked from the inside. However, it doesn't preclude the possibility of someone being present, inflicting the wounds, and then manipulating the lock. It's an assumption that the police took as gospel, and it's an assumption that lacks critical thinking. The door being locked only means one thing: the door was locked. It does not speak to the actions of the person or persons inside the room. The lack of defensive wounds is another point of contention. The police essentially said, no defensive wounds, therefore suicide. But human behavior during a violent attack is complex. Shock, fear, and even paralysis can prevent a victim from actively defending themselves. Furthermore, the nature and placement of the wounds themselves should have been analyzed to determine if they were consistent with self-inflicted injuries. Can someone realistically inflict multiple stab wounds to the back of their neck? It is possible, but highly improbable. It requires a level of contortion and determination that should have raised serious doubts. Now let's talk about the handling of the crime scene. The decision to allow James Schwartzman to enter the apartment and remove Ellen's belongings is a staggering lapse in judgment. It's not just a procedural error, it's a fundamental breach of investigative integrity. The apartment was a crime scene, a potential source of crucial evidence. Allowing an individual, even a family member, to remove items from it before a thorough investigation is complete is simply inexcusable. To allow this to happen less than 24 hours after her death is a level of incompetence that is difficult to fathom. The building manager deserves credit for her diligence. She recognized the potential for liability and the need to preserve a record of the apartment's condition. Her decision to videotape the apartment before it was cleaned was a sensible precaution. However, her efforts were ultimately undermined by the police's decision to relinquish control of the scene. James Schwartzman's removal of Ellen's laptops and cell phone is a critical point. As an attorney, he would have understood the importance of preserving evidence. The fact that he chose to remove these items, knowing they were potential sources of information, raises serious questions. The subsequent discovery of alleged suicidal internet searches on these devices after they had been in his possession casts a long shadow of suspicion. The timing is simply too convenient. It's almost as if someone was attempting to manufacture evidence to support a predetermined narrative. The police's reliance on Dr. Alan Berman's testimony is another area of concern. While Dr. Berman's statements regarding Ellen's anxiety are relevant, it's crucial to contextualize them. Ellen's anxiety, while significant, did not equate to suicidal ideation. Dr. Berman herself stated that Ellen never expressed any feelings of wanting to end her life. The police's tendency to conflate anxiety with suicidal intent is a dangerous oversimplification. Mental health is complex, and it should not be used as a convenient excuse to dismiss the possibility of foul play. Ellen's text messages to her mother, Sandra, are often cited as evidence of her mental state. However, these messages, when interpreted within the context of her ongoing anxiety treatment, paint a different picture. Ellen's expression of feeling overwhelmed and her relief at finding a medication that helped her sleep are indicative of someone struggling with anxiety, not someone contemplating suicide. The police's interpretation of these messages as evidence of suicidal intent is a gross misrepresentation of their meaning. The autopsy report, conducted by Dr. Marlon Osborne, reveals a disturbing pattern of bruising across Ellen's body. The suggestion that these bruises could have been caused by contact sports or intense workouts is simply not credible. Ellen was a first-grade teacher, not an athlete. The sheer volume and distribution of the bruises suggest a pattern of inflicted trauma, not accidental injury. The fact that the medical examiner's report attempts to explain away these bruises with such implausible theories is deeply troubling. The controversy surrounding the examination of Ellen's spinal cord is a glaring example of investigative negligence. The autopsy report's cursory mention of a doctor, Lucy Rook, examining the spinal cord without any corresponding neural pathology report is deeply concerning. The fact that Dr. Lucy Rook is actually Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams, and that no record of her involvement exists, raises serious questions about the integrity of the autopsy. The absence of a detailed examination of the spinal cord, given the nature of Ellen's injuries, is a critical oversight. Multiple stab wounds to the back of the neck would almost certainly have resulted in damage to the spinal cord. The assertion that her spinal cord was intact without any supporting evidence is simply not credible. Ellen's parents continue their fight for justice, hoping that someday the truth about what happened in that snowbound apartment will finally come to light. For now, Ellen Greenberg, the vibrant teacher who once asked how to build a dream, leaves behind a nightmare of unanswered questions. Dr. Cyril Wecht, one of America's most renowned pathologists, reviewed the case and declared it strongly suspicious of homicide. A crime scene reconstructionist analyzed the evidence and concluded that Ellen's body appeared to have been moved after death. Another independent pathologist, Dr. Wayne Ross, identified a hemorrhage in Ellen's neck muscles consistent with strangulation, something completely absent from the official report. Dr. Ross noted that the various bruises across her body were consistent with a repeated beating. Did Dr. Osborne miss these critical findings, or did he choose to ignore them? Even the supposedly locked door, the cornerstone of the suicide theory, proved less definitive than initially claimed. Melissa Ware, the building manager, revealed that the swing bar latch could engage on its own when the door closed forcefully. She had experienced this herself. The security guard supposedly present when Sam discovered Ellen. He later stated he hadn't been there when the door was forced open. And despite claims from two relatives that they were on the phone with Sam when he broke into the apartment, phone records analyzed later appeared to contradict these statements. What do you think? Does this sound like a thorough investigation to you? Questions continue to swirl around this case. Why would a woman with no history of mental illness, who had just texted her mother about dinner plans, suddenly take her own life in such a violent manner? Why would someone stab themselves repeatedly, including in places difficult to reach? And perhaps most importantly, why did a medical examiner change his professional determination from homicide to suicide after speaking with law enforcement? The Ellen Greenberg case is a textbook example of how investigative bias can derail a legitimate inquiry. The police's rush to judgment, their reliance on flimsy evidence, and their dismissal of crucial details paint a picture of an investigation that was driven by preconceived notions, not a pursuit of the truth. Ellen Greenberg case remains officially closed as a suicide, but for many, the questions outnumber the answers. What's your take on this case? Do you believe the evidence points to suicide, or was something more sinister at play? Have the authorities and medical experts failed Ellen and her family by rushing to judgment? Let's know your thoughts in the comments section. To understand why Ellen Greenberg's death, ruled a suicide by authorities, raises so many red flags, we must dive into the science of human anatomy, physiology, and the limits of the human body. Specifically, we'll examine why it is virtually impossible for someone to stab themselves 20 times, particularly in the regions where Ellen's wounds were found. This analysis will focus on the neck, the mechanics of self-inflicted wounds, and the physiological responses that would make such an act implausible. The neck is one of the most vulnerable and intricate parts of the human body. It houses critical structures, including the cervical spine, C1 to C7 vertebrae, the bones that support the head and protect the spinal cord, the trachea, windpipe, essential for breathing, the esophagus, the tube that carries food to the stomach, major blood vessels, the carotid arteries and jugular veins, which supply blood to and from the brain. Nerves, the vagus nerve and other cervical nerves that control vital functions like heart rate and breathing. The back of the neck, where Ellen's stab wounds were concentrated, is particularly dense with muscles, tendons, and the cervical spine. This region is not easily accessible for self-inflicted wounds, especially multiple deep stabs. The angle required to reach the back of one's own neck with enough force to penetrate deeply is anatomically improbable. The human arm simply doesn't have the range of motion to deliver repeated, forceful stabs to this area. To stab oneself, a person must overcome several physiological and psychological barriers. 1. Force required. Stabbing through skin, muscle, and potentially bone requires significant force. The average human grip strength is around 50 to 70 pounds, but delivering a deep, penetrating stab requires far more force, especially if the knife encounters resistance from bone or cartilage. 2. Range of motion. The back of the neck is a difficult target to reach. The arm would need to contort into an unnatural position, reducing the ability to generate sufficient force. 3rd repetition. Even if someone managed to stab themselves once, the pain and shock would make it nearly impossible to repeat the act 19 more times. The body's natural response to pain is to stop the action causing it. Pain is the body's alarm system. When tissue is damaged, nerve endings send signals to the brain, triggering a cascade of responses. Pain threshold. The initial stab would cause excruciating pain, activating the body's fight or flight response. Adrenaline would surge, but this would not eliminate the pain. It would only temporarily mask it. 5. Shock and blood loss. After the first few stabs, blood loss would lead to hypovolemic shock, causing dizziness, confusion, and loss of consciousness. The person would likely pass out before completing 20 stabs. 6. Muscle fatigue. Repeated stabbing would exhaust the muscles of the arm and hand, making it increasingly difficult to continue. Even if someone were determined to harm themselves, the psychological toll of self-inflicted violence cannot be ignored. 7. Self-preservation instinct. Humans are hardwired to avoid harm. The act of stabbing oneself goes against this instinct, making it psychologically taxing. 8. Pain as a deterrent. The intense pain from the first stab would discourage further action. The idea of enduring that pain 19 more times is unimaginable. Let's break it down a little further. First stab. The person would experience searing pain as the knife penetrates skin, muscle, and possibly bone. Blood would begin to flow and the body would go into shock. 2nd to 5th stabs. Each subsequent stab would become harder to execute due to pain, muscle fatigue, and blood loss. The person would likely lose consciousness by this point. Beyond 5 stabs, continuing to stab oneself 15 more times is physiologically and psychologically implausible. The body would shut down long before reaching 20 wounds. Ellen Greenberg's autopsy revealed 20 stab wounds, many of which were on the back of her neck, a region nearly impossible to reach with the force and repetition described. The presence of 11 bruises further suggests a struggle, not self-harm. The official ruling of suicide defies both anatomical and physiological logic. The science is clear. Self-inflicting 20 stab wounds, particularly to the neck, is beyond the limits of human capability. The pain, shock, and physical constraints make it an implausible scenario. Ellen's case demands a re-examination of the evidence, free from tunnel vision and grounded in scientific fact. The truth is out there, waiting to be uncovered. For 14 long years, the shadow of doubt hung over Ellen Greenberg's death like a Philadelphia storm cloud. The official ruling: suicide, 20 stab wounds, self-inflicted, they said. A knife in her chest? Must have fallen on it, repeatedly, apparently. Nothing to see here, folks. Just your everyday case of a woman stabbing herself in the back of the neck after she was already dead. Happens all the time, I guess. But last November, Sam Goldberg, Ellen's fiancé, gave a statement that dripped with indignation. He lamented what he called the pathetic and despicable attempts to desecrate my reputation and her privacy by creating a narrative that embraces lies, distortions, and falsehoods in order to avoid the truth. Mental illness is very real and has many victims. How convenient to blame mental illness when faced with 20 stab wounds and a changing story about a locked door. The tide began to turn when a judge issued a ruling that would have allowed the Greenbergs' second lawsuit to proceed to a jury trial. Suddenly, legal maneuvers flew faster than excuses at a politician's press conference. And lo and behold, Dr. Marlon Osborne, the pathologist who had performed Ellen's autopsy, experienced what we might generously call an epiphany. This same medical examiner who had changed his ruling from homicide to suicide after some friendly chats with law enforcement officials now found his conscience in Pompano Beach, Florida. Osborne signed a document that amended his long-held position on Greenberg's death. It is my professional opinion Ellen's manner of death should be designated as something other than suicide, he wrote. Something other than suicide.
This is the beginning of something big. This is hopefully the beginning of justice. This is hopefully the beginning of a new investigation to figure out who killed Ellen Greenberg. For the first time in 14 years, like you said, the medical examiner, Dr. Osborne, is admitting that this was not a suicide. And when he did that, it then forced the city of Philadelphia today to settle with the Greenberg family.
Something other than suicide. How delightfully vague. Perhaps he thought she accidentally stabbed herself 20 times while making a sandwich. Or maybe she slipped and fell onto a knife, repeatedly in different angles, including the back of her neck. Joe Trask, one of the Greenberg's attorneys, revealed that Osborne produced this statement as a way of resolving the lawsuit. The Greenbergs agreed to release Osborne from the suit. How magnanimous of the doctor to admit he might have been wrong after only 14 years of the family's anguish and depleted retirement savings. What caused this stunning reversal? Osborne cited additional information he'd received since issuing the amended death certificate. Information like, and try not to gasp here, whether Ellen's fiancé was witnessed entering the apartment before placing the 911 call on January 26, 2011, whether the door was forced open as reported, whether Ellen's body was moved by someone else inside the apartment with her at or near the time of her death. Oh, and there was the small matter of Dr. Lindsay Emery, a neuropathologist for the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, who said in a 2021 deposition that it appeared Greenberg had been stabbed in the back of her neck after she was dead. After she was dead? Let that sink in. Though Emery later walked this back faster than a politician caught in a scandal, saying there could have been other explanations for the lack of vital response in one of her wounds. Yes, there could be other explanations, just none that make any scientific sense if you're claiming suicide. With Osborne jumping ship, only 2 defendants remained as jury selection began on a Monday morning. Sam Gulino, the city's former chief medical examiner, and police detective John McNamee. Both denied any wrongdoing, of course, but before the clock struck 11:30 a.m., jurors were dismissed and attorney Joe Podraza announced to reporters, "We have resolved the matter." The settlement included both lawsuits, the one demanding damages for what the Greenbergs called a conspiracy to cover up Ellen's murder, and another demanding the medical examiner's office change its ruling on Ellen's cause of death. Philadelphia city spokesperson Ava Schwemmler said that while city officials admitted no liability, because of course they didn't, the Greenbergs would receive a monetary payment and, here's the kicker, the city's medical examiner's office would re-examine the case. Look, the Greenbergs have been fighting this for 14 years, said Trask. They're exhausted. They spent their retirement on this case. They're ready for closure. He added, all they wanted was for Dr. Osborne to admit that he was wrong and that their daughter didn't kill herself. And that's what they got. And the rest of it was icing on the cake. Icing on a very bitter 14-year-old cake. When reached by phone, Ellen's father, Josh, said it felt as if he'd just taken and passed a very difficult test. We fought very long to get this, he said, to get justice for our daughter. And we did. Sandy Greenberg, Ellen's mother, said, we're very excited. I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I think anything like this was gonna happen. Because why would anyone expect the medical system to admit it was wrong about a woman who supposedly stabbed herself 20 times, including in places she couldn't reach? All these developments could finally clear the way for what the Greenbergs wanted all along, a criminal investigation into their daughter's death. This is what they've been fighting for, said Will Trask, one of their attorneys. Mark Belkin, Osborne's attorney, declined to comment when reached by phone. Perhaps he was too busy trying to figure out how someone could stab themselves in the back of the neck after they were already dead. So, what does this all tell us? That it took 14 years, multiple lawsuits, 166,000 petition signatures, and the threat of a jury trial for the truth to begin emerging. That a medical examiner could change a ruling from homicide to suicide after a chat with law enforcement, then change it back 14 years later when faced with a lawsuit. That a professionally cleaned crime scene, an inconsistent story about a locked door and 20 stab wounds, somehow screamed suicide to Philadelphia. The stab wounds were on the back of her neck, a place nearly impossible to reach if she were the one wielding the knife. The bruises on her arms and legs suggested a struggle, not self-harm. And then there's the knife, positioned in a way that makes you question everything you thought you knew about human anatomy and physics. Damn, this is strange, you might say, and you'd be right. But it's not just strange. It's a glaring red flag that something is terribly wrong with this narrative. The Ellen Greenberg case wasn't just bungled. It was a masterclass in how not to investigate a suspicious death. And after 14 years of fighting, her parents finally heard what they knew all along. Their daughter didn't kill herself. The question now is, who did? And will they ever face justice? What do you think happened in that apartment on that snowy January day? And how many more Ellen Greenbergs are out there, their deaths wrongly classified because it was easier than asking difficult questions? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments. Well, a very big shout out to you for watching till the end. This means a lot to us. If you haven't subscribed and liked our video, please do. We have more case of where and when the police missed it to cover. See you in the next episode.